This video is sponsored by Sailey. We've spent the last month and a half tied to the dock at Half Moon Bay Marina. What was supposed to be a quick rigging fix turned into a whirlwind. From a complete re-rig to unexpected setbacks to long days in the boatyard and a life-changing surprise, One Life and her crew are finally ready to cast off the lines and sail towards warmer waters. Although we've enjoyed our stay here in the marina in Auckland, One Life is finally prepared to go sailing again. We would set off on a 150-mile journey north to Apua, our final port in New Zealand before departing for Fiji. After a major refit like this, we would use these short coastal sails as a shakedown test before setting off across the open ocean. Wait, what? What is happening?
Okay, now it's hard.
Gary is hoisting our main from the cockpit. That is not normal for us. Normally we have to go to the front and we both have to crank it up. As we sailed out of the harbor, Auckland's skyline to our port faded into the distance. We had perfect sailing conditions and we were zipping along at almost 7 knots with the bow pointed to our first stop, Kawau Island. With our sails dropped, we pulled into the anchorage and found a perfect spot to rest for the night. But as Gary went to use the windlass to lower the anchor, it wouldn't work. So he had to let out the chain by hand. He secured our bridle before we reversed on the anchor to make sure it was dug in and safely set.
Why did the windlass not work?
We had such a delightful sail here. We were average 7 knots.
No, everything's good. Just the windlass didn't work, but that's okay. The sail was awesome, and it's so good to be back on the water, and I don't really mind that the windlass isn't working. I'll just pull the anchor by hand. Whatever. We're on anchor. I don't care.
We had 20 knots of wind, and the rigging held up great. We were blasting along, so we're really happy about that. It was really easy to get the main up and down. So yeah, we'll troubleshoot the windlass and hopefully be on our way again tomorrow for another little shakedown sail. We're in Kawau Island. It was just a short 25-mile sail today. And tomorrow we'll do, I don't know, maybe an overnight, maybe another 25 miles or so. We're not sure. There's tons of places to stop up and down along the coast here. So we don't have to rush. We can take our time doing these little sails to make sure all our systems are a go before we take off for Fiji. It's a good thing that our cell phone data is more reliable than our windlass, and that's why this week's video is sponsored by Sailey. When sailing along the coast of New Zealand, we're actually within cell phone range, and rather than use or activate our rather expensive Starlink plan, we decided just to use the Sailey data plan. Using our data plan from Sailey, Gary was able to go online and quickly troubleshoot our windlass wiring. Sailey is an eSIM app that provides instant mobile data to over 200 destinations around the world. It's super easy to use even when you're anchored off the coast, like we are now. You simply have to download the app, select the country you need service in, and then follow the instructions to install the eSIM. You don't need to go to a cell phone store, you don't need to call anyone. It's really simple, and we've used it in New Zealand. We also used it in our quick trip back to the United States, and we plan on using it when we get to Fiji as well. To get started, just click on the link in the description below or download the Sailey app and use code SAILING1LIFE for an exclusive 15% discount off your data plan. All right. Let's get back to the show. Morning.
Morning. Time to start tracing power all the way from the batteries to the windlass to see why it's not getting power.
Nothing.
Try the other one.
Nothing. I know you guys are really loving my socks, shoes, and pants choice right now, but it is cold here this morning. All right, ready? Ready for me to press down?
Interesting, Brookie. So, the windlass problem has been solved after a few hours of troubleshooting today. Basically, I took a jumper cable and I started jumping across connections at the solenoid and up here at the motor wiring and foot switch wiring. And I figured out that it was a bad wire connection coming from the battery plus 12 volts to the foot switches. The power comes to the foot switches, and then when you press either switch, it goes down to the relay solenoid, and that connects the motor wires to run the motor in either direction. So I've just cleaned a bunch of connections, replaced a bunch of terminal connections, and I'm gonna clean it all up and put some heat shrink back on and cable tie everything back together. And hopefully it'll be all set for a while now. There might be a loose connection somewhere that I can't access, or the wire might be nicked or cut open somewhere that I can't get to, where it's pulled through between the hull and the forward cabin. And if it gives me any more trouble, I'll just have to pull a new wire through and replace that wire. But at least it's not the motor, it's not the windlass itself seized up, it's not the solenoid, it's not the breaker, it's none of the big stuff, it's just a wire. So easy peasy.
Even after 6 weeks of boat work, there's always something that needs attention on the boat. It's frustrating, but this is exactly why we test things close to land. If something breaks here, we can still find parts. Luckily, Gary was able to diagnose the issue, get it fixed quickly, and just like that, we were able to get on the move again. We hoisted the sails and pointed the bow north, not sure of our next stop, but keen to make as many miles as we could in the day. One of the best parts about sailing the east coast of New Zealand is all the anchorages along the way, which gives us the freedom to go as far or as short as we like each day. We chose to push on while the sun was up and found a peaceful little nook just outside the busier town of Whangarei to drop the hook for the night. Morning, sunshine.
It's really cold and we need to keep moving north. It's about 6 a.m. Yesterday we sailed another 30 or 40 miles up to just outside of Whangarei. And today we're going to try to get to Apua. So let's get going. It's not even light out yet, but we need to get going early so we can try to arrive into Apua by daylight.
There's something magical about slipping out at first light, and the morning sunrise did not disappoint.
It's so clear and calm right now.
Look at him coming! With no wind, the sea state was glassy calm, and some dolphins came to say hello. The water was so flat that we could even see the reflection of our anchor gliding on top of the surface.
That was really ridiculous.
We love to sail, but days like this remind us there's beauty and stillness too. As the sun started to dip again, we passed the iconic hole in the rock at Cape Brett, just like we did 7 months prior when we were headed in the opposite direction. Throughout our time in New Zealand, we've experienced many beautiful landscapes, but there is something about the Bay of Islands that speaks to us on a deeper level. Maybe because it was our first glimpse of land after a tough ocean crossing, or maybe it's the rolling green hills, but whatever it is, it felt good to be back in a place that holds such meaning to us. We pulled into the seaside town of Russell to drop anchor right in time for dusk. Later that evening, a thick fog rolled across the anchorage, softening the glow of the many anchor lights that surrounded us and creating an eerie calm. Good morning. So yesterday we got in right before sunset and dropped the anchor here in a little town called Russell outside of Apua. And we had a really uneventful sail, or I should say motor, up the coast. There was really not much wind, but we had an amazing dolphin experience. And yeah, so now begins full prep mode to get everything ready for Fiji. Our weather window is coming up in about a week. That's what it looks like right now. And so, yeah, we're going to head off to town, meet our friend Russ. We're going to borrow his van for the day and go do some errands. Gary's just finishing changing our outboard oil. It's been a little while since we've run the dinghy, so he's just making sure that's good to go because we have about a 4-mile dinghy ride from Russell into Apua. We decided to come into Russell last night instead of into Apua because in Apua there's a lot of moorings, and we knew that we would be coming in at right about darkness, so we didn't want to have to maneuver around the moorings. So we'll stay here in Russell for probably a couple days, and then we'll move over to Apua. With our departure to Fiji closing in on us, Gary knocked out the outboard oil change, and then we dropped the dinghy in and headed into Apua to meet up with Russ, who's been a longtime viewer of our channel. It's always such a cool experience to put a face to the name behind the comments.
Good.
How are you?
It's a lot colder than it was last time we were here.
Oh
Yes.
man, we're not used to this weather. We froze our ass off over on the dinghy coming over.
How'd you stay awake?
Russ couldn't have been more generous as he offered up his van so we could get our propane and SodaStream bottles filled. It's light. Alright, well we dropped the propane tanks off and we're here back at the boat, and now we're going to work on fixing our mainsail. We didn't film it because it happened so fast, but we put another tear in our mainsail when we were hoisting it or bringing it down the other night. So I have about a 6-inch hand sewing job to do. Beautiful.
How'd that go? Fast?
Yeah, fast. Much better. So now I just have to trim it.
So it's coming? You sure?
Yeah, I mean,
Give it
as
a cut.
close as you can.
Anchored in the protected waters outside of Apua, there was one more boat job we needed to finalize before taking off. Let's talk about our brand new Watermaker. So we purchased a Seawater Pro unit and had it shipped in from the States. We bought a 110 volt, 40 gallon per hour unit. So why did we choose a 110 volt system instead of a 12 volt DC system? Well, the main reason is that we have an inboard generator on One Life, so we already have a great 110 volt power source. Our old Watermaker was a 12 volt DC system, and it made about 7 gallons per hour, drawing about 20 amps while it ran. And we found that we really needed the generator or the engine running most of the time to power it. And then there was an additional benefit that because it was a DC motor, if the batteries were being charged, the voltage is higher, that DC motor would spin faster, and that Watermaker would output more water. So to listen to it for less time, we would pretty much always run it with the generator or the engine on. Since we're having the generator on anyway, we might as well just run it directly off of 110 volt power. And that's why we went with this bigger unit. The other reason for the bigger 110 volt unit is that with the baby on the way, our water usage and our needs are going to go way up. And we'll be washing cloth diapers and rinsing a baby every day. So that pretty much made up our decision in terms of 12 volt versus 110 volt. But why Seawater Pro? So Seawater Pro systems are completely modular, which means they send you a kit of all of the pieces and you put all the pieces together in different parts of the boat if necessary, plumb them and wire them together however it works for you. That was important to us because we really don't have space on One Life for a prepackaged unit that's already all set up to just drop in. Our old unit was also somewhat modular and it was squeezed under the galley sink. This bigger system, there's no way it would fit under the galley sink, so we're going to have to squeeze it under the settee in a few different spots to make it work. The Seawater Pro system was also cheaper than pretty much all of the alternatives. We priced out some systems that are made locally here in New Zealand or Australia, and they ended up being significantly more expensive even after paying the shipping. Over the past few weeks, I've been installing all of the components and finding spots for them, wiring them, plumbing them, and we haven't really filmed too much of that because we think it'll be more valuable for us to explain to you how the Seawater Pro system works rather than show you all the installation steps. There are plenty of videos on YouTube showing the full installation process if that's what you're after. This system diagram might make a Watermaker appear pretty complex, but if we break it down step by step, it's really quite simple. It all starts with the new seacock we installed back in Half Moon Bay, which allows seawater to enter the boat and pass through a coarse strainer to remove any large debris. From the strainer, the water flows over to a small 12-volt boost pump. This pump pressurizes the water to about 15 psi and sends it over to a pre-filter assembly, where it goes through a 20 micron and then a 5 micron filter. Exiting this assembly is clean, filtered seawater, heading to the workhorse of the system, the high-pressure pump. This triplex plunger pump consumes a lot of power as it takes the seawater from 15 psi all the way up to about 800 psi. From the high-pressure pump, the pressurized seawater flows to where the magic happens, the reverse osmosis membranes. Inside these housings, water is forced through pores too small for dissolved salt molecules to pass, and fresh water is produced. But the salty seawater that doesn't pass through exits and is routed to a control panel. This brine water goes through a special pressure control valve before being directed to an overboard through-hole, sending it back out to the sea. From the other side of the membranes exits the fresh water, and that too is plumbed to the control panel. Here, the purity and flow rate are measured before the clean, potable water is sent down to our freshwater tank. There is also a low-pressure hose from the pre-filter assembly to the panel to monitor the boost pump pressure. Finally, a rinse timer and carbon filter assembly is connected to our freshwater supply so that the whole system can be flushed. And there you have it, a somewhat simplified version of how a reverse osmosis Watermaker operates. Overall, the install went really smooth. Our only hiccup was that the threaded fittings that come with the Seawater Pro unit are American Standard NPT fittings, whereas everything available here in New Zealand is BSPT, British Standard threads. So if I needed any other parts, it was a little hard to find what I needed, but between what I had on the boat and what I could find here, we were able to make it all work. After about a year of using the unit, perhaps we will report back with our experience. I think that feedback will be much more valuable and that insight will be useful to anyone considering a Watermaker. But right now, we don't know too much about it because all we've done is install it. I have a little bit of plumbing left to finish to get the product water routed to our tanks, but we're going to go ahead and fire up the unit this morning and make sure it's working properly before we set off for Fiji. AC spare on.
Oh wow. Yikes. Oh boy.
That's 300.
Yeah? Some's coming out. Good morning. It is finally the day that we check out of New Zealand and start our journey to Fiji. So this morning we have an appointment with customs to check out. So we're gonna dinghy over there and go through that process, maybe pick up one more meat pie before we leave New Zealand, and then we're gonna come back to the boat, hoist the dinghy, and get the show started. You're gonna get, what's your final pie choice?
Oh, this isn't my final pie.
Oh, sorry.
This is my breakfast pie.
Oh.
We'll come back and get a punch before we go.
Okay. Well, we just checked out of New Zealand. It was a really easy process. It's really tough to film in those situations. I don't really like it, so we just left the camera in our bag. But Gary's making one last trip to Burns Co. to get some sealant, some 4200. Just in case we need it. We only have like one extra tube on board, and it's always just handy to have extra of those. And then we'll get a pie, and we'll be out of here. Getting your passage food.
Passage pies. Ready to go to Fiji?
I am ready. I think we're ready.
Let's do it.
It's been a long time since we've done a long sail.
Fire it up. It's pretty interesting to be back here in Apua to depart New Zealand from. We arrived here almost 7 months ago, and our time in New Zealand has been absolutely incredible. It's always tough to leave, but we're stoked to be going to Fiji. Got a long sail in front of us. Let's get this anchor up and get going.
The vibe always shifts before a big offshore passage. On the surface, it might look like excitement, but under that, there's a quiet hum of nerves. We've done many long passages before, but this one's different. It'll be our first multi-day offshore sail while pregnant, and the weight of that has us feeling a bit more uneasy than usual. Big thanks to Salee for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out the link in the description below. Cheers everyone, thanks for watching.